Welcome back, guys. It's another 5-Minute Friday, and today we're going to talk about camera gear. So let's dig right into that. I think what draws me into overlanding is I can do 3 of my favorite things while still traveling with my family. I've always been an outdoors guy, whether it was a day at the beach or a 40-day expedition. I've always been more comfortable outside than inside, and it allowed me to do one of my other interests while experiencing nature. I don't think I can recall a time that mechanics didn't interest me, and I can remember walking through my uncle's garage and asking him questions about his Model T and being fascinated with the fact there was so many moving parts and they all work together harmoniously to create forward motion. And that stuck with me, and I think because of that, there wasn't a time that I wasn't turning wrenches and modifying vehicles. Whether it was racing cars or off-road expeditions, I was always tinkering and modifying the vehicles that I had. Those two kind of passions that I had led me to the third thing that I love, and what's kind of taken up a big part of my life now, which is videography and filmmaking. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. That was a long-winded thing just to say what we're here to talk about today is camera gear and the evolution I've gone through and why I carry what I carry now. There was basically 3 things that I had to overcome to get a good system for overland travel and filming while I'm out and about. The first obstacle I had to overcome was storage, and this is probably the most difficult one. To keep your camera gear accessible and safe are 2 things that's hard to do when you're bouncing around on the trail. We've tried everything from backpacks seat-belted in to storage systems, and what we found that works the best for us now is a seat-back MOLLE panel. There's all kinds of companies out there making seat covers and seat-back panels for the MOLLE system. The ones we use are the Blue Ridge Overland gear. Super high quality, and they make a couple of different sizes to pretty much be universal. So you'll be able to find something that'll fit your vehicle. The MOLLE pouches come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes. They have camera bags, they have tripod holders, pretty much anything for any situation you have. Keep in mind, depending on which side of the vehicle you're sitting on, you want the panel to be on the opposite side to keep everything accessible and keep you from having to reach around your back to grab things. Quick tip, get yourself a good cup with a rubber cover around it that fits snugly in your center console. You always want to keep a camera handy and accessible. That way, if something happens, you're ready to jump out and capture it. But why the cup? Good question. That brings me to my second obstacle I had to overcome, and that's shaky footage. There's nothing worse than having something happen, thinking you caught it, but looking back at the footage and it's so shaky that you can't focus on the subject and it's completely unusable. And we had so much of that at the very beginning that it forced us to kind of come to the conclusion that in a situation where you're in and out of the car and you're running up and down and you're trying to capture what's going on at the moment and you only have that one option, you really need a stabilizer. And they make all kinds of different stabilizers for all kinds of different cameras, and they've come to the point where they're pretty affordable. If you can't afford a stabilizer, get yourself a GorillaPod as a bare minimum. And that's why the cup holder. It gives a place for you to keep the camera on the stabilizer and keep it next to you and accessible. Keep in mind, if you're on really bumpy trails, you're going to want to find some way to fasten it down so things don't go flying everywhere. But none of this stuff is any good if you can't keep it charged while you're on the trail, and that was another obstacle that we had to overcome, and we found a few different ways to remedy this. If you're only going to be out on the trail for a few days, a good way to keep everything charged is battery banks. GearAid makes a light that I did a review on. That's amazing for this because it not only acts as a video or photography light, it acts as your power banks too. And if you're interested in the GearAid lights, I'll put a link to the review that we did a little while ago at the end of the video. If you're going to be out for any extended period of time though, you really can't get away from a vehicle inverter. If you don't know what an inverter is, it basically converts your car's 12-volt power into 110 power that you'd see in any standard wall outlet. If it's camera equipment or sensitive electronics you're charging, you want to make sure you have a pure sine inverter. This is going to be a little bit more expensive, but it's a safer, cleaner energy, and it's going to protect your electronics from frying. Alright, now that we're stored, stabilized, and charged, let's talk about the gear I bring with me and the evolution I've made from what we started out with to what I have now. I once heard somebody say,
always use the very best camera you have at your disposal.
Which I thought was smart because it's always more important to tell a story than it is to capture a moment. And what I mean by that, just a single video clip captured in a moment doesn't really mean anything without any context. So it really isn't important what camera you're using, it's more important how you're using it and telling a good story. When we started out, we had handy cams, cell phones, and GoPros. That's pretty much all we started out with. So we started with very basic gear, but it was what we had and we made the best of it. But as you evolve and become a better filmmaker, you want better equipment. And by the time we got to the Oregon Trail trip, I feel like we had a little bit too much. We wanted to go full bore and do this big production, and we ended up sending a box of stuff back about halfway through the trip that we just weren't using, and honing down our gear to basically 5 cameras. And I know that sounds like a lot, but some of these you probably already have. Number 1 is your main camera. This is going to be the best camera you have. For me, I carry a Sony A6500. This is a mirrorless DSLR crop sensor camera. I carry it because it's small, compact, but it's awesome for video and it's good in low light. Number 2 is your backup camera. This is going to be a smaller camera, something probably a point and shoot with a fixed lens that you can carry with you if you don't want something that's as intrusive as your big camera. To keep it all uniform, I have the Sony RX100 Mark V. Again, it's great for video, it's got good slow motion, and it's good in low light, and it has a built-in ND filter which helps in highlight situations. Number 3 is your action cam. I use the GoPro Hero 6. This is the first GoPro that I've used that has really good stabilization, and the footage is good enough that you can use in somewhat cinematic situations. Number 4 is a drone. Pretty much standard with any video now, people want to see drone footage, and everybody's got a drone now. So the one I carry with me is the Mavic Pro, and the reason is because it's a perfect compromise of size and video quality. There's really not a drone company out there that's doing it as well as DJI, and the Mavic I feel like is a perfect travel drone because of its size. And last but not least, number 5 is going to be your cell phone, and we pretty much all have a cell phone camera with you, and oftentimes this is the one that gets used the most because it's the one that we have the most often. And if you know how to use it, you can actually get some pretty good results out of it. So those are the cameras we use. The stabilizers we have are the Zhiyun Crane V2 and the Smooth 4. The Smooth 4 is a cell phone gimbal that we use also for the GoPro, and the Crane works for my backup camera and my main camera, which is typically what I use it for. So I'll put a link to all the gear we talked about in the description below, and let me know what you guys are shooting on and what gear you carry with you. And while you're there, hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time on 5 Minute Friday. See ya!